Now, for some of you that's not seen this chart before, this chart is more just an illustration of time from the beginning of the birth of the church and the age of the kingdom of God, right straight on through to the end. We know this, John the Baptist came as a forerunner to prepare the way for the coming of Jesus. Jesus followed on the scene, and in his ministry, he calls 12 apostles. All right? He is crucified and he is ascended to heaven. We find then, brothers and sisters, the 12 apostles was all the ministry that the early church had for a short period of time. But a little later then, God dealt with this man who was named Saul of Tarsus. He was a Jew. He was a well-educated man. He was a man on the Jewish Sanhedrin court. And from then on, God began to deal with Paul. Because we know later on, God called him to be the apostle to the Gentiles. The reason I bring that out tonight in this manner is, as I said this morning, Paul wrote 15 epistles. In that contains every doctrine, the complete foundation of the Gentiles' believers' faith in God's plan of redemption. I'm going to say some things tonight, brothers and sisters, as we get a little further along in this message. We have all grown up here in the end time. When we look back in the areas of religion where we've been brought out of, and we look at the whole picture, and it's a confusion. All of your educated ministry throughout your systems, brothers and sisters, they want to try to leave their congregations with the thought, well, we are the true Christian church. We are this, we are that. Even the Catholic Church, they leave the world with the idea, they are the original church. I'm not talking about any particular Catholic person, but the Catholic Church is not the original church that was born in the upper room on the day of Pentecost. Don't let anybody tell you that. The Catholic Church, it really absolutely, brothers and sisters, it's a long ways from being established upon the foundation of all the apostles and so forth. The Pope of Rome says he's the successor of St. Peter. They say that he was the first bishop of Rome, but there is actually no historical records that Peter was ever in Rome. But nevertheless, they have crammed a lot of stuff down the throats of people through centuries of time. And people are gullible. People many times, they have such a prone attitude. Well, but he's a man of God. I believe what he says. So you just take it for granted that he's telling you the truth. But if you go back into history, brothers and sisters, we can see what's going on here in the States today, in the priesthood, all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. And these things are coming out here in these end times, just right before the coming of Christ. And if you want to see, brothers and sisters, what God is going to do to the whole Catholic system in Europe, with them 10 horns, them, we will say the political beast of Europe, you just take a lesson from this, what they're doing now to the priests in the States here. Because when the time does fall there, brothers and sisters, in Europe, then it tells you in the 17th chapter of Revelation, and the 10 horns will hate the whore. And they will destroy her. They will confiscate her properties, her wealth, her investment, and there won't be nothing left. But now that's one thing, brothers and sisters. But as we look at this line, we come on down through. Here's Paul right here. But we come on through, brothers and sisters, and in 66 A.D. he was beheaded. But by that time, there's other men, brothers and sisters, that's been raised up to continue on with the work of Paul. Here's Timothy, Titus, Apollos, and others. So by the time that we come into 96, John is the only one of the original 12 that's alive. He has the prophetic picture that's pictured in the book of Revelation. And actually, it covers from here to the coming of Christ over here. It brings all the way through time, brothers and sisters. But then we come here to 180. We have nothing but confusion going on in the realm of Christendom, because it's a fact. You can educate a man to be a man of God, but if he does not have a revelation from God himself, He is just got a head full of religion. And that's why, brothers and sisters, Christendom has suffered the consequences of all of this down through time. Now then, some might think when they hear what I have to say tonight, well, Brother Jackson, you go through so much of this negative stuff that you've seen and everything. I have a reason for bringing it out. Because these names that I will refer to, they were men that was given as much opportunity to see Brother Branham as I was. Those that I have reference to here, like say in the States. Not necessarily in Africa and those other places. But I want to deal here tonight in this respect. We met a young man and his wife and family at the Tabernacle when we first started going there in 1952 into 53. I took a liking to him. He was a soldier of World War II. He was in New Guinea. He lost his hand during an air raid. When we first met him, he was seemed like a very sincere type of a person. His name was Estel Beeler. But there's been many men, brothers and sisters, for some reason. And many times I find myself asking myself the question, why did it have to fall like this to these men? Brother Bertie walked up here this morning. He said, Brother Jackson, I want you to know I'm thankful that God brought us here years ago. He led us here. Shortly after they was here, a young man, he was supposed to have had a dream. And in that dream, he told me about it, the young man did. That I was going to get killed overseas. And the night he took me upstairs and told me that, he said, Brother Jackson, I might be seeing you for my last time. Well, brothers and sisters, his mother used to sit right there. This young man had a young brother play the guitar up here. Now, I want to just show you how people will be all in the name of Christianity. You'll be surprised the amount of flesh that people get caught up in, and people take it for granted. But that little fellow, he can sit here and play his guitar. If everybody happened to be standing at the time, she had a certain way she'd give him the nod, and he'd light into dancing. And boy, he could just dance up a storm. Now, I'm saying this tonight, brothers and sisters, because if we're not all careful here in the end time, flesh caters to flesh. But truth, brothers and sisters, don't cater to nobody's flesh. It's got to be the sincerity of your heart and soul. And the Holy Spirit's going to deal with your insides, not your flesh. And it's a shame that many people have just thought, oh, if we were emotionally and express our joy and everything. And brother, please don't take me wrong. And I have to say, if you sit here and you quench the Spirit when you feel like shouting or something or another, that's not my fault. That's your fault. You should know better by now. But I've seen too many of these characters, brothers and sisters. They go hog wild and pig crazy. Well, then after that young fellow told me that dream, he never came here no more. Well, then the mother, she goes up to Brother Metcalf's. Well, she falls out up there. Then she goes up to Utica. Now, I don't know what was going on up there, but after a while she quit. She's at home. Well, she winds up in a nursing home. But that little boy that used to dance up a jig, he went back to the world. He got with Hank Williams Jr. and went up in the wrong crowd. And now he's dead with AIDS. And Raymond Jackson didn't do it. The devil did it. Because there's some people, brothers and sisters, they can't get that flesh. I want to be something. I want people to know I've got something. Well, I have to say, what did they have? Because the young man had seen that I was supposed to get killed overseas. That young man had a terrible wreck a few years back and was almost left a paraplegic. But God was gracious and he recovered out of it. And here I'm still alive. Now, what I told you this morning, don't speculate with it. I told that, brothers and sisters, just to give my critics something other to think about, but not for you to play with. God can take me anytime he pleases. But if for some reason, brothers and sisters, he has ordained for me to be a guard to something other, then you pray for me that God will give me the strength and the brain and the voice to do so. And I'll have to say, Lord, I want to do it the best way I know how, that your people can be happy. Well, nevertheless, this other young brother that had lost his hand in World War II, he was also one of the 7 that had a dream about Brother Branham leading up to the time that he was to preach the seals. But at the same time, the young man had another dream. He was supposed to see a church in his dream, and the word Ichabod written over the door. And brothers and sisters, I will say this tonight as humbly as I know how. God's going to test you by some means or others to see if that mind of yours and that spirit of yours can be trusted with things that really are truthful. Because after Brother Branham has taken over the scene, that young man absolutely just went haywire. He used to be a good friend of mine. He used to come out here and he would have some certain tracts printed. He put them all over our windshields. He wouldn't come in because Ichabod's written over the church house. Wherever he would go, he got to preaching, brothers and sisters, that the bride will not be in any church building. They will be gathered in their homes. And that's the way he began to split up a lot of families. Well, it went on, brothers and sisters. In the final short term of his life, he got a miserable revelation that the husband and wife was no longer to live intimately together no more. And I'll never forget, there was a man and his wife and family had moved into this part of the country years ago. And he went into their homes and got to preaching this stuff to his wife. And she got hung up on that revelation. And she told her husband, no more will we have relations. Well, it drove him out of the home. And that man, while he wouldn't come here to church very much, but yet he would come down home there and sit under the shade tree out there and cry his heart out, want me to console him and give him some kind of something other to lean on. And I have to say, brothers and sisters, as I look back through the years, I've seen more than one young man ruined his life. Sure, he had saw the prophet. He's had a dream. He thought all of this was going to lead to something. More than one of them. I never tried to be anything. I just wanted to fit along into the picture because I didn't see at that time what was lying ahead of me. And brothers and sisters, that man today is 6 feet in the ground. No. His wife had him cremated. He died with a massive stroke. And I've always wondered, why did his poor wife have him cremated? I've never heard of Christian people wanting to be cremated. Have you? Now, I say these things tonight, brothers and sisters. There's a lot of people in this area and over the United States that's been caught up by some of these men. They stand behind Brother Branham's name. They use a lot of the sermons. They build their own revelation, their own ideas. And down the road of life they go. And it isn't long, brothers and sisters. They've created problems, heartaches for people. It's not brought unity. It's brought discord. It's caused people to go right back into the world. And you wonder many times, why does God even tolerate such stuff? But nevertheless, I have to say, in the end, you and I are responsible to ourselves what we allow our ears to hear and how we look at it and begin to recognize, is it truth? Or are we just hearing somebody beat his gums together? Now, that's a common way of saying it. And I have to say, it's a shame that through the number of years since Brother Branham's death, all over this world, men have done that. I'll never forget when we first started putting out the Contender, shipping it overseas. Africa was the one place it just went like a forest fire. This was back then, brothers and sisters, in the mid-70s. There was a man over there in Ghana. His last name was Humphrey. He got to corresponding with me. And he wanted to be the man that would take this Contender and use it and minister in the remote areas of Ghana. Well, finally then he wrote to me one time and said, Brother Jackson, if I had a power saw, there's a place over here I could get a job, and I could really support my ministry. Wonderful. So back then, brothers and sisters, overseas, a power saw wasn't as expensive as they are now. So I thought, well, if that's the way he wants to make a living, to help support his ministry, I sent him the money to buy a power saw. It's the last thing on earth I should have ever bought. Because you know why? A simple thing. He didn't know that you're supposed to mix the oil and the gas properly. And he hadn't cut very much timber when he burnt the thing up. And then he wrote me, wanted me to send him the money to repair it. And I thought to myself, no, you're on your own. Nevertheless, I went ahead and supported him. We went there in 74. And he was our guide. He was the interpreter. He took us all over creation. And then, brothers and sisters, in the 80s, I brought him here during the time of convention. When he was a young man, he wanted to contest me right here on this pulpit. And he'd been coming here to church. So for almost 2 hours, this young man contested me and everything that I've stood for, right before a lot of these preachers that are here during this convention time. I'm telling these things tonight, brothers and sisters, because remember, God has a way of sending you to school. And God help you if you can't recognize the hand of God in that schooling. And what that young man had said caused two of the ministers, and that was the brother Humphrey and another brother that was here, that we had helped likewise. But I'm going to cut this part short. When that brother Humphrey went right back to Africa, and I'll have to say, God will give you one chance to see the right thing and look at it in the right way. And if you don't look at it in the right way, you'll not get another chance. Somewhere's up the road, you're going to have a wreck. It wasn't long, brothers and sisters, till there was a man over there wrote and told me that Brother Humphrey now then was keeping company with another woman on the sly. He says, I thought I'd let you know, Brother Jackson, so you know how to send your money. It wasn't no time, brothers and sisters. His wife, and I will say this, Brother Humphrey, when we was there in 74, he had a beautiful black wife that was his. She cooked us a meal and brought it to our hotel, and it was good. And I thought to myself, when I got the word that he was running around with another woman, I thought, what in the name of common sense is this young man supposed to be a servant of God doing a ratting around and running around like this? Nevertheless, he went off with her, and his wife had to leave her. Well, I never corresponded with him no more. I can repeat these things over and over and over through the years, brothers and sisters. God has gave many a man, both in America, in Canada, in India, the Philippines, and you name it. And for a period it looked like, oh, they're overjoyed with what they see. But somewhere along the line, they begin to let an element of flesh begin to enter into the picture. And if they're not careful, no, they're not liable to me, they're liable to God. But it isn't long till somewhere they have a complete, total wreck. And I have to say, you have to hang your head in shame to think of the thousands of people around the world that God sent Malachi 4:5 to turn the heart of them back to the faith of the fathers. And they wind up absolutely just doing the opposite. And I can say, brothers and sisters, numbers and numbers of people today, they become overjoyed when they hear a truth. But then there's somewhere down the line, brothers and sisters, God's going to begin to deal with you and me. Are we going to be willing to be led according to the truth that he has allowed us to see? We're going to have to be learned to be led by him. I say that with all sincerity. We are going to learn how to be led by God. Because it plainly tells you in Romans the 8th chapter, for as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Not maybe so think so, they are the sons of God. Interdenominational realm today, brothers and sisters, very few men, they have an idea. They're sent out by programs and committees. But when this truth came to the world, to begin to sort out and sift out and lead out a people that could find the road and the pathway back to the original faith, we've got to be accountable to God. How do we hear it? What do we do with it? What does it really mean to us? And then God's going to try us to see, can we be led? If we can be led by God, and there'll be different times God will test you and me to see if we can be led in the right way. And I say these things tonight. Up the road in front of us, as God begins to move throughout this earth, to sift out his little bride people, every one of them is going to be tested and tried in their area by different means. Because as they begin to respond to the fact that they're going to be part of that universal bride of Christ, they have got to learn to be led by the Spirit of God. No matter how small we might be, somewhere in that little bitty, we will say, capacity of the Christian life, somewhere once in a while, he's going to lay something other in our lap that we're going to be responsible. How do we relate to that? How do we let God use us? And I say them things tonight, because if this bride is going to be complete as he brings us together, there's going to be a period of time, brothers and sisters, and let me say this carefully, it's not how much we've danced. Go ahead and dance and serve the Lord. Praise him in the dance. Praise him upon the loud sounding cymbal. Do all these things. But you don't prove yourself what you are by just merely that. I hope you understand me. It's how you and I begin to live and correspond. I've seen these characters can jump over benches and run around the aisles and everything like that. Turn right around, brothers and sisters, and call you a hypocrite behind your back. I have very little confidence in that kind of a person, because they live strictly on the emotions, and they're putting on a show in front of people. They want you to think they've got a whole lot. As far as I'm concerned, they've got very little. And up the road in front of us, God's going to put every bit of that to test. We will prove to God and before our fellow man what we are and what we're not. Because if God can't trust us, he's sure going to make a mess, a wreck out of us. I'll never forget, in the different places we've been privileged to go through the years and to take this message. Down in the country of Mexico, men from Tucson, Mexican preachers, as well as other American preachers, went into Mexico to take the message of Brother Branham. And all over Mexico, books, quotes, they have memorized it. And they're looking for Brother Branham to come back alive and to have a tent minister and all of these things. When God opened the door for us to go down there, it was during that first trip down, brothers and sisters, that I was privileged to meet Brother Cecido. In the first and the second time down there, I saw that Brother Cecido was a man. I felt like God was going to use him, that I could work through into Mexico. And the reason I'm telling this tonight, for several trips we went into Mexico, and God was in it. Many people was brought out of them quotes and things into this truth And it got where brothers and sisters, they would travel for miles over the mountains and everything just to come to our meetings. There was a man down there by the name of, he was an older man. His name was Sam Garcia. They called him Sammy Garcia. He lived out in a little town there called Augustina, but he did a lot of agriculture with machinery and stuff. He had a truck. In our meetings where we would go, he would bring a lot of people in that truck to these meetings. Finally, he begged me to come to Augustina. So then the time came, we got to go in there. And there is a place, brothers and sisters, God began to really take this truth that we brought him and began to establish a fellowship. And the reason I'm bringing it in, God has given many people an opportunity to see the truth we stood for. But along comes an element of some kind of flesh they're related to, and it isn't long. Bingo, they're gone. He had a son that lives here in the States in Tucson. He had been already married. I had met him. I thought he was a nice young man. But something happened that him and his first wife became separated. Well, then he kind of went off back into the world. He went back into Mexico. Well, for several months, he was just living in the world again. Well, he met another woman, and he married her. And in the process of time, he decides that he's going to give his heart back to the Lord and get his life straightened up. So we happened to go down there for a meeting. And I had heard that the older man, Sammy Garcia, he was now wanting to use his son to be preaching and interpreting in his church. When I found out that he had got married again, I said he could be my interpreter. But I'm not going to stand for this thing for him to stand on the platform and be a preacher after I'm gone. I took Brother Cecito and went to the man's house one morning. And I told him, brother, you can't do that. Now here's the reply I get. The young man, oh, he is so sincere. But God has told me, God has told me, God has showed me. I said, I will accept the fact that you can be an interpreter. But I will not accept the fact that you've been married the second time that allows you to be a leader before God's congregation of people. Well, then his dad took it up. God had showed him it's all right for his son. Well, I've seen brothers and sisters, I'm not going to sit there and argue. I said, if that's what you're going to do, I said, I will not be part of it. That was the beginning right there, brothers and sisters. After months and months of his father hauling truckloads of people to our meetings, now that he's turned and gone the other direction. And when that split came, don't you know, brothers and sisters, most all of the people that have become part of the congregation, they've left the old man with just a handful, and they went to themselves. The reason I'm saying this tonight, people get so caught up with flesh, and they never know at what moment they're going to come face to face with the reality of having to look at that right through this book. Either we do it by the book, by the rule of the book, or we'll give in to the flesh, brothers and sisters, and we will find ourselves going backwards. Because I've said this many times. This is the truth. God's not going to let you have a lifetime to play with it. He'll give you a certain ample opportunity to prove yourself that you can believe it, you'll uphold it, and you'll walk straight with it. But if you begin to reach a point where, brothers and sisters, you want to project something other than that, oh my, look what I'm doing. Watch out. You start putting on a show. Well, to some people, that might be what it looks like. But in the eyes of God, you're getting ready to make a fool of yourself. I say this because all over the world where I've been, I've seen people after people after people. That's exactly what they've done. Then you look back, what's happened to them? You know good and well you didn't do that. Some words they could not wait on God. And so God just absolutely let them make a wreck out of everything. And I don't like to talk like this tonight, brothers and sisters. But the reason I'm going to tell you this. I believe with all my heart, scattered over this globe, in the past 30-some years that we have presented this truth, there's now out there in the little groups, preachers, all the ministry that the Bible speaks of. They've just not been identified. But I believe, as I said this morning, as the season approaches us, and God's going to take that truth, and He's going to cause them people to bud. It's just like a rose bush. All of a sudden, she's a blooming out everywhere. Because in the heart of them people, there's a hunger to what? To be a part of that living bride. And there's going to be a willingness to not want to show off, but just to be a part of that chosen bride of Christ. And they're going to want God to lead them and direct them in the way He would have them to live and walk. It's going to be a joy to serve the Lord when you know He's been in it. And I hope you understand what I'm saying tonight, brothers and sisters. But all over this world, I've seen them go crazy. And I say to myself, God help me. I don't never want to preach something other that causes somebody to go down the road of life and make a mess of himself. I have to say, brothers and sisters, God will allow you once in a while, give you an opportunity just to see how far you will go. But it leaves it up to you and me. You're the one that's going to make the final decision to prove yourself to God. That you've seen His Word. God has used His Word to speak to your heart. And you're going to say, Lord, not my will, but thine be done. And I'll have to say, brothers and sisters, 30-some years we've stood here in Faith Assembly. I've said this many times. That paper's not all mine. That's yours. It's true what I've taught. It's the revelation of God. But I've said I'm going to share it with the people because you're the ones that supported it. And out across the country where it's went. And I can bow my heart and my head tonight and say, I didn't start a paper to build my name into a great reputation. We started it out years ago, and I felt like God had laid something on my heart. I'd just like to share it with people. But maybe after about 5 years, that would be it. But look what God has done with it. Because we never advertised gimmicks, money-making gimmicks. It's always been truth. And I'm not ashamed tonight to say it's the oldest publication in the religious sense there is in the entire world. The Voice of Healing is no longer in existence. Healing Waters is no longer there. Soul Clinic is no longer in existence. The Latter Rain articles they used to print is no longer in existence. So for 30-some years, we printed truth. And how many letters we've gotten from people from all over the world thanking us. That contender has been a lifeline to them. It's opened up things in the Bible. And I have to say, brothers and sisters, I don't have that much education. I'm not that smart. But as I look to the Lord, I have to say, He put something in my heart and soul. And He knows that there's hearts and lives out there tonight that's hungry for it. Because we didn't preach it and put it out there for a name. There's people receiving it and they're feasting on it. So I have to say, we share it with them. And we get these letters back thanking Faith Assembly for having been so faithful. So I have to say, God raised up Faith Assembly in this area to be a testimony that this is the area where this man's message started. And we have not desecrated it. I'm not ashamed to say those words tonight. We have not brought reproach upon it. I'm guilty of saying a lot of things, yes, that when certain ones hear it, well, you can see there what he thinks about the message. It's because they only look at it from the carnal standpoint. They do not even see the real biblical picture that that man brought. And so I say, praise God tonight. He's worthy of all honor. As this truth has gone out, I would like for us to realize the Apostle Paul In the latter years, as he wrote Ephesians 4, starting in verses 11 on down, at that time, Paul could write that epistle and say, now God has set some in the church, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. For what purpose? For the work of the ministry. At the time that Paul was called, there was not yet prophets and evangelists and so on and so forth. But in process of time, God added to. And the reason I'm bringing this out tonight, my brothers and sisters, coming out of our religious systems of today, all the doctors of divinity, of theological education, people don't even see the real authors of these epistles. They don't have a revelation and a picture. They just think any preacher has got the answer. I have to say, brothers and sisters, when you really study the chronological procedure and the pictures in the Bible, Paul is the only man that had a full revelation of what the Gentile church is going to be founded on. And I will contest any doctrine of divinity. Let him stand up and speak up. Because he wrote a complete analysis of what our salvation is, where it starts and where it terminates. In that is every foundation of our doctrines. He taught predestination and stood there. He taught the Godhead. He taught the sanctification. And he taught how the Holy Spirit was to be inside of us, teaching us, schooling us, causing us to grow more and more in the image and likeness of Jesus. He made it sound so simple, brothers and sisters. It would take an educated person to miss it. I hope you understand what I meant by that. Because they look for some kind of big doctor of words. But Paul spoke of it in such simple terms. And as time went on, here's God reaching out there, calling other younger men. Never did God raise up a man that was equal to Paul or a competitor to him. Around the world, hear what I'm having to say. Never did he. You know it. Well, you know what, Brother Jackson, now to think of it, that's right. Now, the reason I said that way, that's just about how church-going people read the Bible. And I will say here in the end time, he's going to have apostles. And I will say this tonight, he won't have one too many or one less than's needed. How many knows what I meant by that? And there will not be more evangelists to get in each other's way than necessary to get the job done. Each one will have a unique calling. No, he's not coming down the road with a great big catalog of paper and a pen writing new epistles that he's got a new revelation. He's going to take absolutely what he already knows to be truth that's been restored in these last days. And he'll either preach that, brothers and sisters, or God will put him in the junk pile somewhere. I have read Thessalonians, I've read Timothy, and Galatians. Not a one of them men that Paul mentions became an author of his own epistle. They were exhorted, you preach what I have commanded you to say. Timothy did. And I will say it in this day, that don't take away from them. And it don't glorify me any more than it glorified Brother Branham. And that's why these are preachers today. Never was there a man that had a gift in his life like him. But when he could stand there, brothers and sisters, and look at a person, you're not from this city, you're from the state of such and such, you're from such and such a city, I can tell you your house number. By that time they're crying or screaming. And he was not a doctor of divinity. He was just a poor old hillbilly fellow, brothers and sisters, full of the Holy Spirit. But he loved the Lord. And he laid these things out so beautiful. And I have to say tonight, I don't have anything against an educated man. But we've came through the years and the eras when God has used educated men. That's why one of them beasts up there had the face of a man. It goes to show in that period of time, he will use the intelligence of men. And if we could go back in time in the history and read the letters they wrote, brother, they wrote a lot of letters, brothers and sisters, that made kings and princes tremble. Because the power of God was in it. But we're here in the last days, brothers and sisters, when God is not using the instrumentality of educated men. He's just using men with a brain and a sensible ability, because that eagle is what we're ministering under. And the eagle flies higher than anything. And that's through that image, brothers and sisters, we're going to get our inspiration. And I will say tonight, as humbly as I know how, you ain't going to have that inspiration unless God can trust you in it. He ain't going to let you run down the road. Hey, I got an eagle following me. Well, when you start doing that, brothers and sisters, you're heading for the wood yard. You don't say anything. You just let God lead you and guide you. Sometimes we lose sight, really, what is these prophets? They're not preachers that went off to Bible school somewhere. I'm going to give you the name of three of them. This man's name was Agabus. He's mentioned twice in the book of Acts. But in it all, brothers and sisters, it goes to show God spoke to him somehow or other by showing him things. And I have to say this is tonight as I'm talking like this. God don't have to call some more school bus full of men to fill the ranks. They're already out there, if you understand what I mean. They've just never realized what yet their ability is. But I believe with all my heart, out there in the different areas of the Christian world, wherever the people are at that's got this truth in their hearts, there's men there that struggled, they prayed, they've labored, sometimes feeling like they're climbing a high bluff. But somewhere as they begin to see the picture of this thing, that's when God's going to open up something other to them, and they're going to see themselves being used by God to fulfill every type of a ministry in whatever fashion that God wants it to be. They will not be men suddenly getting on a big high-priced car and traveling the world over. Oh, I'm going to have a big ministry. Them days, brothers and sisters, belongs to that denominational world out there. I don't say that some of the apostles won't do a little bit of traveling, but they won't never necessarily have to be a traveler in order to fulfill the capacity. Remember this, an apostle is a man that has the ability to take certain scriptures and to relate it and put it in its proper pictorial meaning and feed it to the bride. He couldn't do it in his natural. But when God takes his intellect and then we will say controls it and then reveals it, then it becomes a burning reality in his. And that don't make him a competitor to Paul or anybody. But it makes him a man that's capable of taking some of the deep things that can help lift people up spiritually and send them on down the road, having victory and joy, because now they know what the truth is. But like I said this morning, everybody got the, oh, there's going to be about a carload of apostles and they're all going to be equal and they're all going to be writers. You better go to bed and have a good night's sleep. And I hope when you wake up and then the next morning you'll have a different picture of it. Because when you go back and study this Bible, why did Paul write 15 epistles? Why didn't Peter write 15? He did not have the revelation that Paul did. He had a ministry to the circumcision, that's the Jew. Paul plainly said so. most of the things that Peter wrote was basically about faith, obedience, how to allow the grace of God to develop our character. But then in 2 Peter 3:10, there is a prophetic insight that he saw, brothers and sisters, because he saw the coming of the Lord and how that the heavens been on fire, the earth will melt with fervent heat. But in the prophetic sense, that's all he saw. How many understand my point tonight? He did not take all the major doctrines of the foundation of the Christian faith and write about it. So I'm saying these things tonight, brothers and sisters, and I'm not doing it to get attention, but to give some people some sound, solid, logical, reasonable things to think about. Look at Judas. He only wrote one little short epistle. Wonder why he didn't write 15. He didn't have the revelation to, or he probably would have. But I like that one he did write, and he exhorted the believer in that hour. Hallelujah. He exhorted them that you should earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered unto the saints. Don't run off and hide. Stand up to it. Because contend means to engage in combat. Face it head on. And don't hide. Then also in the book of Acts, the 15th chapter, here's two other fellows, Judas and Silas. When Paul and Barnabas came back to Antioch, found them all in the desert over circumcision. They went to Jerusalem to find out what the apostles had they really sent them men up there to teach that circumcision thing. You know the whole picture. And there's where the apostles sat and they discussed these things, and they finally told Paul and Barnabas what the Gentiles should do. And they sent these two young men who were referred to as prophets. Well, Brother Jackson, what do you think stood out? I believe these young men had an unusual ministry about, we will say, a prophetic either utterance or a vision or something other that God spoke through them at time to help to lead and direct other people. They were looked upon as prophets then. Now they didn't get on a nice donkey with a silver-studded saddle and ride all over the Middle East with a great world ministry like our preachers have done in this day. But they stood in their place. They've let the Spirit of God use them. So the apostle at Jerusalem sent these two men back to Antioch with them. And they went back and they exhorted the brother, explained exactly what was said at Jerusalem. And from then on, brothers and sisters, Paul winds up taking Silas with him. So the reason I'm bringing these things in tonight, brothers and sisters, is all because I believe this truth as it's went around this world in 30-some years. There's a ministry out there that has gotten it. They've embraced it. They see the truth in it. They're waiting something or other for God to do something in their lives or in their midst. And I believe, brothers and sisters, as this thing begins to catch fire, God will absolutely deal with those individuals that fulfill these qualities. And it won't be 40 years God putting His church together. Because when these fellows, whatever their calling may be, pastor, teacher, evangelist, or what, when they see what God now is doing, they're going to grab that truth, brothers and sisters. And with a zeal, a Holy Ghost zeal, they're going to begin to relate it and expound it in the simple way that they can to the people that God gives them an opportunity to minister to. And the Spirit of God's going to work through their lives to confirm it to the edifying of those people. That's why I have to say, there's going to be gifts working in every little assembly when God gets this thing done. Because He set in the church all these gifts for the edifying and so forth. And not a one of them is going to have to go to some Bible school to learn theology. Because God's going to bring them through all kinds of schooling, of trials and tests, circumstance. I used to think years ago, when God said for me to start the church. I had this philosophical idea. Every preacher that comes down the road carrying a Bible on his arm, I wanted to honor him. He could come in the door, well, brother, how about you preaching tonight? I have saw them come, I've saw them go. And I have learned some absolutely sad pictures and stories. I've been took, and I'll say, brothers and sisters, I begin to lose the fact not every man that carries a Bible under his arm is a preacher. He's just a pretender. You got to look him over. And I've always said this. I don't care if there's a carload of them sitting here. Oh, Brother Jackson, I just got back from Alaska. And I had a meeting up there that lasted 6 weeks. Oh, the power of God. I don't care if you came from Timbuktu in the middle of the Sierra Desert. Now, don't tell me that that place don't exist. It does exist. It is, and it is in the middle of the Sierra Desert. Timbuktu. I looked it up. So my point is, brothers and sisters, the highway is full of road runners. They're not running from the coyote either. But they're just running to try to put on a show. But I'm convinced tonight God's going to have his little people. So simple. Men that loves him first. Men that loves God's people. But men that loves God's truth. And men that are going to be willing to study it, to see it in its right dimension. Because when it's all over, he'll have every gifted ministry in that church operating. God ain't going to set some in retirement. When he calls you, the only time he'll retire you is when you go in the ground. So some people look, how old are you, Brother Jackson? Well, I'm going on 80. What? 80? Well, a lot of other fellows, they retire when they're about 65. I've done said this, well, when I retire, I'll be 6 feet in the ground. But as long as God gives me a voice to be able to uphold his word, I want to do my share and my part. And I'm thankful to God tonight. Because I know now, brothers and sisters, through these years, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt what God was pushing and propelling me to do. He never spoke to me in advance of a lot of things. But he has absolutely used circumstances, pressures, to teach me how to wait on him for a final answer. And through the years, as the people have come from different parts of the world, I want to put this in here tonight. I hope it can fall into the right category. Every man that's been called to be an apostle, he will have to prove his calling to God. Well, Brother Jackson, you said certain person was an apostle. I sure did. He wasn't a mule skinner when God first called him. Now, how many know what I meant by that? If you're called to preach the gospel, out there in the religious world, you can be called anything. But if you have heard this truth, that God has ordained that out of and through this, he will bring you into a potential place. He don't call you to be a teacher out there and then a pastor here. Whatever your potential is out there, that's what you'll be here. How many understand me? But to say that you might be found faithful in it all, that's up to you. Because if you get to playing around with something other in the Word, that just sooner or later becomes an idea, and it's not a really divine revelation. It might be that we should have left it alone. Because Paul never indulged in anything that he ever had to go back on. You know that. How many hear what I said? In other words, he never taught it until he knew it was the truth. And that's why I've said many times, saints, we've never printed anything until I first prayed about it and I knew it was the truth. And then there it is. So I have to say thank God tonight. Now there's a lot of fellows around the world would take it and tear it all to pieces and put it and substitute it with something else. I can't change that. But as we've waited on the Lord for the very things of truth, I'm thankful to God tonight. And I say this. To me, it's far more, if I was a man somewheres not here in Jeffersonville, and I was wanting God to absolutely lead my life, I would be asking God, God, help me to know, to be able to recognize the truth. And Lord, help me to know how to understand it. Then help me to know how to handle it. And then help me to know how to administer it to God's people. You won't find them talking like that in the denominational world. No. Because they'll take what Paul said, the Baptists will say one thing. Go somewhere else and the Methodists will say it says something else. And that's the way it's been for the umpteen numbers of years. But when it falls down into the category where the bride's to be, that real minister, brothers and sisters, will take it and put it in its proper perspective. You will have the real true meaning upon which your faith will be built. And a lot of people have looked at my life. Oh, but there's a lot of preachers going to haywire. Jackson, he's just a mortal man like anybody else. Well, I'm glad Brother Amos wrote the book. You ought to read your Bible. Did God call Paul and then Paul mess it up? Did he? Many are called, but few are chosen. And them that God knows are his. Do you think they're going to be up one day, down the next? No. They're going to be pressing the battle. They're going to be pressing on. And I say these things tonight, brothers and sisters. I hope every young brother and sister that hears me try to understand it in the right way. Not only the apostles back in the days of Paul wrote the Bible. Barnabas, yes, you can find in the Ante-Nicene Fathers, you can find some of his writings. But I want you to know when you read them, it did not take a thing away from what Paul has taught, because that's where he learned the most of it. So I say these things tonight, brothers and sisters. We're on the same kind of a road. And we're moving in here. And right here, brothers and sisters, is what we're dealing with. And as we go toward the end, yes, that line will get narrower and narrower, and it'll get fewer. But I believe, brothers and sisters, it's going to be God's truth. God will be glorified. And I don't ask for no recognition at all. All I want is your prayers. God, just help me to be honest. I would rather stand here, brothers and sisters, and knowing when I'm done that I've said something that's truthful. And I don't have to go home and worry about, well, did I make a mistake? Maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Maybe I should have said it this way. I want to be able to say it, and when I go home, I can go to sleep knowing I don't have to change it. Because to me, a true revelation is not something that you have to change. You don't have to dilute it. It'll always stand the test. And I'm going to say this tonight as I'm going to bring this part to a close. 3 weeks ago, this coming Wednesday, it's the only vision I've ever had in my Christian life, in the daylight. I just ate dinner. So usually after I eat my dinner, I'll go in and lay down on the couch just to rest my eyes a few minutes. I might take a 10-minute nap, and again I might not. But I remember I closed my eyes, but the next thing I know, I shook. I was here in my church, looking out over a big crowd of people, and I saw a certain man. He's not from this state, not from this locality. He was sitting back there looking right at me. It startled me. It happened so quick. I thought, why is he looking at me like that? But I know, as I looked at him, I knew he's here for something. That's all I know. Somewhere that man's going to appear in this congregation one of these days. It may be next week. It may be next year. But when I look back across the crowd and I see that man sitting there, I'm going to say this. Sir, why are you here? Because I believe with all my heart, God is going to bring him precisely at the time that there's something in his life, that there's a reason why he's going to bring him here. Never have I had a vision like that. In 50-some years of preaching, I've had dreams, but not like that. So to me, brothers and sisters, if I say no more, to me it's a little indication. Up the road, there's something that God's going to do. And he's going to begin to show us all how to begin to respect his leadership and the workings of his Spirit. Because when we go out of this world, we're not going out of here with a graduation. You're not going to have a diploma hung on your walls. You're going to go out of here with a revelation in your heart. And it's going to be accompanied, brothers and sisters, with a change in that mortal body of yours and mine. And he's going to wash us through his word. And every bit of this word is going to become so real. It's going to make us happy. And every last one of you, from the least to the biggest, is going to learn to be led by God. I don't care if you're only 15 years old. If you really love the Lord, God's got a simple way that he can take that little tender mind or spirit and heart and deal with you in a way to let you know. He does not show favoritism to age nor youth. It's the sincerity of our heart that he's looking at. And when he sees that sincere heart, he's going to honor it. So let's pray. Father, I pray tonight, take these things that's been said today, Lord, and put them together. I don't know how else to say it, Lord, but you do. You know your people all over the world. You know where they're gathered together at from time to time. God, I just pray, let these words fall on their spiritual ears. May you stimulate their inner beings and help them to begin to realize the world tonight is sick. It's in chaos. It's in turmoil. With our own nation wanting to legalize polygamy and all, sodomy and gays and all of this junk. Well, Lord, you said it 2,000 years ago. As it was, so shall it be. Now we hear that political men wanting to contest this and to contest that. But we know, Lord, we're standing right here at the end time. Help us, Lord, to be ready to follow you. And, Lord, help me, whatever, God, you've ordained for this vessel of clay to be or to do. God, I wait on you. Take these mortal lips and this frail mind and lead us. Just make me a blessing and a help to your people. Because, Lord, I appreciate every one of them. You bought them with your shed blood. And, Lord, I want to do my part to share something that's of value to that of their spiritual upbuilding. I pray now in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. God bless every one of you, brothers and sisters.